Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am the Omni viewer, and welcome to Omni at the Movies, where I'm reviewing another brand new independently produced kaiju film which I saw at G-Fest. This one called Howl from Beyond the Fog. This movie is much shorter than The Great Buddha Arrival, but it has just as much historical significance, albeit of a different kind. Though I should specify before I get too far into this review, I did not see a complete version of this movie. The director was there to give a little introduction before the screening, and he said that unfortunately they weren't able to complete the film in time for showing it at G-Fest. Specifically, the dialogue track was not ready to go. So I watched this movie without dialogue, and as a result, the story is not 100% clear. So I have to take that into account when doing this review. I cannot judge this on certain things like how the plot progresses or how the acting is. I have to base this predominantly on a lot of technical aspects. So just keep that in mind going forward. I am reviewing a not quite finished version of the film. With that being said though, for something that isn't finished, it was still really impressive. Howl from Beyond the Fog is unique. That is the only word I can use to describe it. Among kaiju films, it is truly unique because of how it is presented. To date, this is the only kaiju movie, at least as far as I've been able to see, that is done entirely in the style of Bunraku. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Bunraku is a style of traditional Japanese theater that's done entirely with puppets, but a very specific kind of puppet. Puppets that are more akin to dolls, in a way. It's not as well known in the West as, say, kabuki theater, because it's not necessarily as bizarre to our Western sensibilities as kabuki is, but if you know about it, you know that it's a really interesting kind of theater. And Howl from Beyond the Fog is the first kaiju movie, again, as far as I've seen, done in this style. All of the human characters are Bunraku puppets, and the kaiju, Nebula, is operated as basically a hand puppet. Occasionally looks like there might have been a guy in a suit, but otherwise, 100% puppetry. This is essentially the dark crystal of kaiju eiga. And the amount of skill and craftsmanship that went into making those puppets is something else. You can see in every single frame the amount of care that was put into this. Because this is not a studio-backed film, mind you. This was funded entirely on Kickstarter, but it's got some big names in the industry behind it. And as a result, there's just so much passion and love put into the visuals of this movie. And in fact, even though, like I said, there's no dialogue, and the few title cards present to explain the plot went by a little quickly, and I'm still not sure if it's because the cards themselves were too quick or because the English subtitles accompanying them were delayed, but even with those in mind, I could still really get a sense of who the characters were and what their relationships were to each other based entirely on how they were operated. I'm sure there's a lot I'm missing, but just based on what I had to go with, I got quite a bit out of it. One of the first things I said to a friend I went with to G-Fest after this movie was over was, if this is what it's like without dialogue, then I'm really interested to see what it's like with dialogue. Although, having thought about it a little, part of me kind of wonders if I prefer it without dialogue. Not that I don't want there to be no dialogue, but I feel like seeing it without dialogue is now part of the experience. So, if anyone involved in the movie is watching this video, if you guys remember how DVDs used to have a music-only option on the audio menu, please, please, please let that be an option if you release Howl from Beyond the Fog on physical media, because that would be really cool. In fact, I have to say, the music, again, much like the Great Buddha Arrival, but in a different way, very atmospheric, it's an ambient score, so it's not really composed of complex melodies, but the way it works in tandem with the visuals makes for some great atmosphere overall. And of course, this is a kaiju movie, so I need to give some attention to the kaiju himself, called Nebula, if I remember correctly. The monster Nebula is a really good one. He has sort of a traditional lake monster appearance. Long neck, humped back, you know the kind. Loch Ness Monster looking kind of thing. But not just a generic plesiosaur, or what have you. He's got a distinct appearance. He has, like, quills coming out of his back. His head has a very distinct and expressive shape. It's the kind of design that's not too complex, but not too simple either. It strikes a good middle ground. And if there are ever any physical renditions of him made available for purchase, I would seriously consider getting one. But, we'll see what happens. Right now we're just talking about the movie itself, and as a movie monster, I think he works really well visually, and as far as personality, again, I'm sure there's a lot I'm missing because of the lack of dialogue, not that I think he talks, but based on the plot synopsis, he has a very specific connection with one of the human characters. And again, that's conveyed through the visuals of this movie. So he definitely stands out in that regard as well. He's not just a generic monster that says roar and breaks things. He is an actual character within this film as well. That's really all I can say about the movie at this point. I hope to one day see a completed version of it, and if I ever get the chance, I'll make another review giving you my full thoughts on what it is like now that it's complete. But for now, I can say that I really did enjoy it. It's, once again, a labor of love, and that much is evident. And stylistically, it's unlike anything else you'll see in the genre. So, it's definitely one to keep your eyes on. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer, signing off. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, as well as subscribe to the channel for more content of a similar nature. Also, check the description for links to our Twitter, DeviantArt, and Patreon pages, as well as the Amazon link for the novel Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, penned by yours truly. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.